Mr. Speaker, I've listened to the contributions of all of the persons who have spoken is of start. I've heard those on this side of the House, and I've heard those on the other side. Mr. Speaker, I can safely say that while I've spent the time here, I can actually step from elsewhere and know specifically what the opposition is going to come and say. Year after year, Mr. Speaker, it is the same old rhetoric coming from the opposition. Nothing new, nothing of substance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I went back and I did some research in terms of what the leader of the opposition in particular has said in response to the budget of 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Same old thing every year, Mr. Speaker. Each year as I come and I prepare, Mr. Speaker, I work with my files to support what it is I'm saying. And I try as best as possible to label them so that I know specifically which file I need to go to as I'm speaking. And I really had no choice, Mr. Speaker, but to label this one same old, same old. Because that's really and truly what it is, Mr. Speaker. You got to what he said in 2015 in respect of the budget for 2016. And ZIZ reports, Mr. Speaker, that the Right Honourable Dr. Denzel Douglas, who from the start accused the government of trying to mislead the public. In his view, the 2016 budget did not represent new ideas, and Douglas criticized the Team Unity-led government for not presenting its budget sooner. The budget 2017, and this one, Mr. Speaker, written by Elke Hewlett. Douglas 27 budget figures purposely misleading. And it says here, I am saying that from the presentation of this budget and from looking at the estimates, the Prime Minister is misleading us. That is what I am saying. I am not supposing. I am saying it is so because the figures are here, the facts are here for us to see. Same story, Mr. Speaker, about misleading persons. Budget 2018 passed in St. Kitts Nevis Parliament. The opposition leader said there was no serious attempt to represent realistic and true figures to the Parliament. He described it as a tampered document riddled with discrepancies and designed to mislead. Same old rhetoric, Mr. Speaker, 3 years in a row. The budget for 2019, Mr. Speaker, St. Kitts opposition leader describes budget as a mishmash of projects. And it says here, they have been fooled once by the so-called Team Unity government, and they will not allow it to happen again. Same old thing. Comes to speak about deception. He comes this year, Mr. Speaker, and you get the same story from him, that the government campaign on transparency and good governance, and it is instead employed deceptive accounting. Same thing, Mr. Speaker. Nothing different. And that is why I said, Mr. Speaker, you can sit down at home and you know specifically what it is he's coming with. One of the things I've heard them saying over and over again, Mr. Speaker, during the budget presentation is that there's no IMF report. And because there is no IMF report, they are limited in terms of responding to the budget. There's no transparency. There's no accountability. As if, well, it is only the IMF report can speak to what is happening in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. But even as you listen to them, Mr. Speaker, you would think that with St. Kitts and Nevis is the only country which has never published an IMF report. We're not unique in that aspect, Mr. Speaker, because if you go and you do a search, Mr. Speaker, you would recognize that outside of the region, you have had the same thing. And right here within the Caribbean region, you have had the same thing. Countries which have refused to publish the IMF report. And each country must know why it takes that particular position. Yes, the IMF report hasn't been published, and it is, what, for 1 year? It hasn't been published. You would get the impression from them, Mr. Speaker, that this is something ongoing. Unlike other Caribbean islands, Mr. Speaker, where you have had the report not published for several years. You got here, Mr. Speaker, and this is a report from the IMF website, and it speaks to Turkmenistan, Mr. Speaker. And it says here, under Article 4 of the agreement, the IMF has a mandate to exercise surveillance over the economic, financial, and exchange rate policies of its members in order to ensure the effective operation of the international monetary system. The IMF's appraisal of such policies involves a comprehensive analysis of the general economic situation and policy strategy of each member country. IMF economists visit the member country usually once a year to collect and analyze data and hold discussions with the government and central bank officials. Upon its return, the staff submits a report to the IMF Executive Board for discussion. The board views are subsequently summarized and transmitted to the country authorities. The authorities have not consented to the publication of the staff report and the related press release. That's outside of the region. We got here, Mr. Speaker, IMF website. And for 3 years, Mr. Speaker, in respect of Antigua and Barbuda, the very same thing is being said. And I don't have to repeat the words, because the words are the same. The only difference, Mr. Speaker, it says here, 2016. The authorities need more time to consider the publication of the staff report. It wasn't published, Mr. Speaker. 2017. The authorities have not consented to publication of the staff report and the related press release. 2018, the authorities have not consented to publication of the staff report and the related press release. But it doesn't stop the opposition members in Antigua and Barbuda from going and making a contribution, and a sensible contribution, to the budget debate, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't stop them, because there are various other institutions from which you can garner the very same information.
So why hide it?
When I hear, Mr. Speaker, for example,
why hide it?
that the IMF is a reputable financial institution, and so we need the information from the IMF, it makes you wonder what they're saying about institutions such as the Caribbean Development Bank. What are they saying about institutions such as the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank?
They don't do the same analysis.
Because you can go to those institutions, Mr. Speaker, and you can get information.
They don't do the same work.
But I think part of it, Mr. Speaker, the World Bank, part of it, Mr. Speaker, is they don't want to do the work to prepare and come and adequately represent the people.
No.
Because there are several reports that one can refer to, Mr. Speaker, in terms of how St. Kitts and Nevis is performing economically.
They don't have the IMF information in there.
All of them here, Mr. Speaker.
They don't have the IMF information.
And even, Mr. Speaker, the IMF has information as to the performance, the economic performance of St. Kitts and Nevis. There are reports from the IMF which speak to how St. Kitts and Nevis has performed.
So what are you hiding then?
And they can go and they can access those reports just as I have been able to access those reports.
So what are you hiding?
So do not use the IMF as an excuse, Mr. Speaker, because all of the other reports are there.
So what are you hiding?
Mr. Speaker, this first one that I refer to, Country Economic Review 2018, St. Kitts and Nevis. And this one prepared by the Caribbean Development Bank. A bank that we access funds from, Mr. Speaker. A bank, Mr. Speaker, that we are part of. We have signed on to it. Each month or each year, Mr. Speaker, we pay our contribution towards the Caribbean Development Bank, just as we pay to the IMF. So why can't we depend on information coming from the Caribbean Development Bank? But it is because the reports speak to the positive economic growth taking place under this Team Unity administration. They don't want to come and make reference to them. Please. So they give you the impression, no IMF report there, so they don't know how the government is doing economically, so they can't come and speak to that. They don't want to say to the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis that this Team Unity government is performing and performing positively on behalf of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. But that is why persons here in the Federation voted for this Team Unity administration and will vote for Team Unity again. Yes. Because as we have said here, one good term deserves a next. And we have had a very good term. 2018, the Caribbean Development Bank says it is estimated that economic growth in 2018 increased to 2.5% from 1.2% in the previous year. So compare 2017 to 2018, the reporter said that St. Kitts and Nevis had increased growth. It says inflation was negative in 2018. In other words, Mr. Speaker, prices dropped, not increased. When you hear them saying people ain't spending the money because the cost of everything gone up, that isn't what the experts saying. This is information supported by the Caribbean Development Bank. And it says consumer prices dropped by 1.1%, following a 0.5% increase in 2017. So between 2017 and 2018, prices dropped, Mr. Speaker. The main reasons for the fall in prices: inflation had already been negative in the years 2015 and 2016, while the decline in the price for transport, housing, and utilities. And it says to you that the price for housing and utilities declined by 1.3%. Housing, Mr. Speaker, you have heard them. They said under this administration, the cost of housing increased. But Mr. Speaker, in terms of the distribution of houses, a lot of the houses distributed by this administration were during the period 2017-2018. And so you see that being reflected in terms of what persons are paying for housing here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. But they don't want to give persons the good news. So they come in here and they preach doom and gloom. Because that is what they were associated with. Doom and gloom. That is what they brought to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. But those days are finished. Finished. And that is why the people are saying they don't want you back. They don't want you back. And the sooner you accept that, the better it is for you. They don't want you back. They had enough of that. Moving forward under this Team Unity administration. And so they're finished with you.
Finished with me?
Finished with you.
Ask Kenny would have finished with you.
It goes. Again, same old talk. Outlook. CDB projects an increase in growth to 3.0% in 2019, mainly on the back of expanding construction and tourism activities. Again, an increase expected in terms of the growth of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. 2.5% they said in 2018, 2019, they're saying 3.0%. Improvement. Not reported by me, not reported by the member for Nevis 9, but reported by the Caribbean Development Bank. And if they weren't lazy, they would go into the research and come and arm the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis with that information. But as I said, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't fit in with their narrative, because their narrative is that nothing is happening in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Speaker, this next report, I think 200 and something pages, produced by whom? The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and it's dated October 2019. You're talking just about 2 months ago. And it gives a breakdown in terms of performance here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. It gives a breakdown for Latin America and the Caribbean. And when you look at the report, Mr. Speaker, you recognize that St. Kitts and Nevis doing extremely well. Extremely well, Mr. Speaker. The report says is that in 2019, global growth is expected to be 3.0%. 3.0%. And it says for Latin America and the Caribbean, the average growth expected is supposed to be 0.2%. So globally, 3.0. Latin America and the Caribbean, 0.2%. Well, let us look at what the report says in respect of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, Mr. Speaker. Let us look at it. Latin America and the Caribbean. And of course, it gives a breakdown for the countries within Latin America and the Caribbean. As I said, for 2019, the average is supposed to be 0.2. It says Antigua and Barbuda, 4.0%. Argentina, a negative 3.1%. It speaks to the Bahamas, 0.9. Barbados, a negative 0.1. Belize, 2.7. Chile, 2.5. We go to some of the other islands. Grenada, 3.1. Jamaica, 1.1. St. Kitts and Nevis, 3.5%. St. Kitts and Nevis, 3.5%. So not only above the global growth rate in 2019 of 3%, but also above the average for Latin America and the Caribbean. Way above it, and way above most of the other Caribbean islands. The only exception you see in the Antigua at 4.0%. That's the only exception that you see in.
You brought it down from 6.5%.
You see Trinidad and Tobago, 0.0%. Big Trinidad and Tobago, 0.0%. With oil. We don't have no natural resources here. No natural resources. And Mr. Speaker, if you look now at 2020, what is the projected growth for 2020? It says globally, the growth rate is expected to be 3.4%. And the average for Latin America and the Caribbean is expected to be 1.8%. Again, you do the comparisons. St. Kitts and Nevis expected to be at the same 3.5%. Mr. Speaker, so again, above the global average. Above the average, Mr. Speaker, for Latin America and the Caribbean. And when you look at the other Caribbean islands and you make the necessary comparisons, Mr. Speaker, again, we are performing better than them. But as I said, these are the figures that they don't want people to know. Don't want people to know. And so they don't go and do the research and come and share the information with the public, because it's going to make them lose even more badly than they're going to lose the next general election.
Go number one, those teams.
Gonna lose.
Let's say they had 6.
Huh?
They lost.
Exactly. If they had 6 and they lost.
Because over the 5-year period, 1% growth. That is their record.
That's the next report.
Negative, negative, negative.
Mr. Speaker,
3 years in a row.
yet the next report. And this report, Mr. Speaker,
Down in the hole.
it comes from right here at home.
Don't know what you're saying.
Right here at home, Mr. Speaker.
5.5.
The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank.
Look at me.
So when they're telling you, Mr. Speaker, information isn't available.
Yes.
Information available.
Yes.
The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, which has maintained
Yes.
a stable currency
Yes.
within the region for so many years, when other currencies up and down the world going up and down, we have a stable currency, and you can trust the report coming from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank.
Now for the optimist.
But again, I suppose it is because of what the report says.
Yes.
Because the report has in good news.
Yes.
While they're over there saying nobody's spending money, nothing going on in the country.
Yes.
The report of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank is giving a totally different picture. Totally different picture, Mr. Speaker. And I want to go to several different sections of the report.
Yes.
Bring the IMF report.
St. Christopher and Nevis. Preliminary data suggests that economic activity in the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis in the first 6 months of 2019 has expanded, driven mainly by increased activity in the construction sector and the tourism sector. On an end-of-period basis, consumer prices fell by 0.9%, the same thing I just said. In the external sector, the merchandise trade deficit is estimated to have narrowed mainly on account of a decrease in import payments. Now let's analyze that, Mr. Speaker. Nothing happening in the economy. But the central bank is telling you that during the first 6 months, you had positive growth because of activity in the tourism sector, activity in the construction sector. Well, who working in the tourism sector, Mr. Speaker?
They see it every day.
Who working in the tourism sector? As a matter of fact, the member from number 6 probably benefiting from the tourism sector because probably renting to persons coming in, whether on excursions or whatever it is.
Airbnb?
Yes. Probably benefiting from it. And then you're going to say nothing happening. Says the construction sector. Well, who working in the construction sector? Who working in the construction sector? Local persons working in the construction sector. Say the construction sector is booming, then persons making money from out of the construction sector. TDC making money, and once TDC is making money, the staff making money. Hosford's making money, Masonry Products making money, Builders Paradise making money. All of them making money, Mr. Speaker, benefiting from the boom in the construction sector.
Making less than they made before.
It says the economy of St. Christopher and Nevis is forecasted to expand further in the remainder of 2019 based on robust inactivity in the construction sector and tourism industry. Yesterday I heard or the day before, taxi drivers ain't making any money because too many taxi drivers out there. But it says robust activity in the tourism sector. I heard too many taxi drivers. The same man who said a few years ago when he closed the sugar industry, burst the glass ceiling and give all of them a taxi license. Burst the ceiling, give all of them a taxi license. Now saying nothing happened in the tourism sector. But they say what the central bank saying. The central bank said there's robust activity. He said a little bit of activity. He said small activity. He said robust activity. Member for number 6, you know the meaning of robust?
No, I don't.
You don't?
No, I don't.
At the pier,
Security search is loving
And people say,
I like that one. They said border security search the luggage robustly. That gives a better idea as to what it means. Oh, it was a robust search. It was a robust search.
Joke.
you are laughing at the people out there who experience action every day.
Mr. Speaker, let's continue with the report. Real sector developments.
Every day. difficulties that they have.
Real sector development. Real sector preliminary indicators reveal the growth in St. Christopher and Nevis economy in the first 6 months of 2019 was fueled largely by activity in the construction sector and the tourism industry. Construction activity remained buoyant in the first half of 2019, primarily due to high public sector investment spending. In the public sector, capital spending by the government increased by 26.5 million to 78.8 million, mainly associated with the upgrade of the Island Main Road project. I went to the first signing ceremony, Mr. Speaker, as an Ali from Halfway Tree participating. As a gentleman from Kayan participating. Alaklin.
Yes.
And who the others? I can't remember the others. Huggins. But all local young people involved in that. So who benefiting? Booney, when they're saying that people ain't got no money in their pockets. People benefiting. All local persons signed those contracts. And then they're going to say, and signed in public. When they're speaking about transparency.
First time happening.
Signed in public for everyone to see.
Yes.
And you continue. It says, the rehabilitation of the Old Road Fisheries Complex. Reg France is doing that. And next young local businessman. You have the upgrade of the road improvement project. The construction of residences led by the National Housing Corporation. Well, I could speak to that because all Sandy Pointers have been involved in the construction of those homes. Not just the contractors building the homes, the plumbers who have received jobs, the carpenters who have received jobs, the tilers, the painters, all young people from the Sandy Point community benefiting from the programs of this team unity administration. And this is what the central bank is speaking about. This is what it is speaking about. The construction of the new water taxi pay in Nevis, roadworks in Nevis, among other capital projects. The construction of the second cruise pier, the airport rehabilitation works by Scasper also contributed to robust public sector construction activity. You all noted here.
All the year.
I don't even know if I get to my ministries today.
Reggie doing work in Nevis too now?
The report goes on. Value added in the tourism industry is estimated to have increased in the period January to June 2019 relative to the same period last year, chiefly on account of higher stay-over arrivals. Stay-over arrivals. Stay-over. That means the people ain't coming on the cruise ship. They're coming, going into the hotels, staying in the hotels. They go on the strip, they buy from on the strip. They go on to Spratnet, they support Spratnet. They come into bars, they buy the craft. They go buy the bars and the lime. And nothing happening in the economy. Y'all can't be serious. All you all over there saying that central bank doesn't agree. And the people out there on the street, they definitely don't agree. Because they're not better. My son are going shopping too.
Yes.
That's how good the economy is doing. Because as I said, prices have fallen. So she's taking advantage of it. As a matter of fact, you know, when we asked him for during the break, he said she probably going shopping again. Yes, he said it. You, man, you said that. You said she probably going shopping again. I even turned to you and asked you if she going to buy a tarpaulin. You said, well, you all don't leave the lady alone. He said it. When do you want to? You already knew when he said it. And he sit down there and say, yeah, he said, now when they say you're a stranger to the truth. You forget?
That's all she's a woman, so she got to do shit.
Okay, all right, she's a woman, she got to do shit things. The man said here, say it.
That's what I said.
You're changing now.
No, I said it.
Oh, he's forgetful.
So why you want the woman though? If you want to shop?
Mr. Speaker, I continue. Output in the agricultural sector is provisionally estimated to have increased during the period under review. Total crops produced rose by 59.0% relative to the same period last year. And another day speaking about the gentleman who came here with the seed, saying you're going to start some sort of marijuana. Something that you had pictures with he and the member for number 6. What's your name again? No? Alki David. saying the agriculture that they're speaking about here.
Yeah.
They're speaking about local farmers. The farmers in constituency 6, 7, 5, 8, all over the country.
Yes.
Local farmers will
And nothing happening.
from the marijuana industry.
Nothing happening.
Agriculture is down.
Central Bank says agriculture is up by 59.0%.
Agriculture is down by 6%. Look at your figures.
59.0%
Nothing like that.
in the first half of 2019.
Down by 6%.
When you look for it and stand up on a point of
No,
order,
I don't have to.
you look for it.
I don't have to. I'm telling you what it is. You said it is down by 6%.
Fiscal
Yes.
development. And it says here, the fiscal operations of the federal government, which is largely driven by the central government, resulted in an overall surplus of 191.5 million in the first half of 2019. That's a lot of money. 191. You're going to get your increase out of it that you say you will want. Don't worry. Don't worry. You say you will want to increase. Yes. Yes. And the duty free too.
Not a duty free, yeah.
And your name say nothing about the duty free, but you say you want his increase too. You know, it's a current account surplus of 246 million.
Everything is for you, eh?
And so, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what they're speaking about. Because the central bank is saying something totally different.
They live in a different world.
I don't know what world they live in. It must be Dominica or Dubai. I really don't know.
Perhaps they are different dollars.
And
Shake the knee.
listen to the last paragraph of the central bank report. Moreover, persistent fiscal surpluses are likely to maintain debt at sustainable levels and create some space for counter-cyclical spending if required. Finally, if the ongoing efforts to address crime in the Federation continue to be successful, it could further enhance social conditions and the doing business environment. Even the central bank commending the government for dealing with the crime situation here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Commending us, saying if it continues, the opportunity for doing business increases, and that is why we have made the investment in ensuring that we have peace here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. For 20 years you couldn't do it, and that is what you want the people of the country to go back to? 20 years, couldn't do it. And talking about coming back. Coming back to what? The same old?
No, we won't have that.
People don't want back these headlines around the world indicating that we have the highest murder rate in the entire world.
Yes.
We don't want back that.
We don't want that.
We have passed that stage.
Highest
Past
debt
that.
in the world, we don't want that.
Don't want back that.
And that's
Highest debt in the world, we don't want back that. People ain't going back there. And people will not forget those things.
We ain't going back there.
That's why we rejected it.
And we will not allow the people to forget. We'll not allow them to forget, because that is your past, that is your history, that is what you're accustomed to. That is what you know about. You don't know about bringing peace to the Federation.
No.
You know about giving people haircut and saying you reduce the debt.
Yes.
That is what you know about.
Yes.
The largest public debt, the most murders in the world.
Yes.
That is your history.
Yes.
That is your legacy.
You're going close.
That is your legacy.
Remember.
That is your legacy.
Call for again.
Mr. Speaker, I heard, I think it's the senator opposite. He said the central bank said in 2017 there was some negative growth, and so in 2017 the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis was in a recession. Well, the first thing I have to ask if they know what is the meaning of a recession. Because when you look in the report, Mr. Speaker, when you look in the report says, available data indicate that the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis expanded at a decelerated rate in 2017 compared with the performance in 2016. Real GDP is estimated to have risen by 1.7% in the period under review, compared with an expansion of 2.2% in the previous year. When growth slows down, it doesn't mean that there has been a recession, because that isn't a recession. You said, You said it's a recession. There's still growth. Exactly. As a matter of fact, when you look at what is a recession means 6 months, Mr. Speaker, of contraction of GDP. 6 months contraction of GDP, high unemployment, stagnant wages, fall in retail prices. That is what happens when you have a recession. Those things did not happen. It's just that there was a slowdown in the growth.
That's what we're saying.
And if we look at it that way, then under his administration, you have had several recessions in this country.
That's 1.2.
Because I have a next report here from the World Bank, and it gives you the growth rate in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis from 1979 right up until the year 2018. And we could start with 1979, Mr. Speaker.
Why don't you put the IMF in board?
1979, 3.91%. As a matter of fact, 1978, 79, 7.60%. 1980, 8.44%. The first year Pam was in government. 1981, 1.55. 82, 0.55. 83, 1.19. 84, 8.87. 85, 8.55. 86, 10.86. The highest growth ever recorded in the history of this country. 1986 under Pam administration. 1987, 6.55%.
Cocaine era.
The informal economy.
The cocaine era. That's the cocaine era.
1988, 9.23. 1989, 5.48. 1994, 0.88. 1991, you had negative growth. Negative 1.86. The first time in the history of the PAM administration, and the only time that you had negative growth. 1992, 4.27. 93, 6.80. 94, 5.30. 95, 5.38. New government. 96, 5.84. 97, 6.24. 1998, few years after, negative 0.49. 99, 3.22. 2000, 10.41. Still ain't reached PAM own yet. 2002, everything you all blame on hurricane. Blame your loss over there on the hurricane too. 2002, 2.47. 2003, minus 3.44. So that's 2 negative growths so far under that administration. 2004, 4.08. 2005, 9.70. 2006, 2.92. 2007, negative 0.05. 2008, 6.49. 2009, 3.37. You had a world recession from 2008 to 2009. So one could accept the negative growth there. But in 2010, you had negative growth again.
The crisis continued.
The crisis continued with you. It continued with you. So you had a negative 1.47. 2011, 1.78. And 2012, negative again.
Fix them.
So the recession continued in 2011?
Fix them.
Fix what?
Go on to 2013. 5.1.
2012? Yes, 2012 the motion was filed.
2013, what is it?
That must be what caused the recession. 2013, 5.47. 2014, 6.06. 2015, 2.15. 2016, 2.32. 2017, 1.17. 2018, 3.0%.
2013, 5.4. 2014,
In 5 years.
6.4. And every year.
In 5 years.
Every year.
In 5 years, we have had all positive growth. All positive growth. The most negative growth we have had in this country is under you who represent the past. You who represent the past. The most negative growth that we have had. You who represent the past. No matter what you say, you can't change it. The most negative growth in this country are under you. You represent the past. Nobody going back to that. And the sooner you accept that reality, the better it is for you. Accept your pension and bow out.
Why
you don't get it from Social Security?
Douglas will take you out in number 5.
Boy, you know the funny
What time
thing?
you say?
2004, you say I'm going to lose. I tell you, it's the same old, you know? And you're proving it.
Number 5.
2004, when you were at the top of your game, I broke your monopoly in this parliament when you had all 8 seats. 2004, when you had all 8 seats, I broke your monopoly in this parliament. 2010, you said the same thing. 2015, you said the same thing. You come back again, same old, same old. That is why I told you, I had to write on this file, just for you. Same old, same old. Same old, same old. Nobody wants you back. You're done, you represent the past. You represent the past. So if persons want to talk about recession, the recessions took place under you even after the world recession came to an end. You still had negative growth in this country. Nobody going back to that.
You are the past and number 5 now.
Nobody going back to that.
It is the present and the future.
And so, in speaking, they speak about the poverty assessment report. They say we're making people poor, even though the central bank saying things are robust in St. Kitts and Nevis.
And we helping the poor.
They say we're making people poor. We making people poor. Well, let me see who made people poor in this country. Let us examine who made people poor in this country. You had a country poverty assessment for St. Kitts and Nevis 2007-2008. And I have here with me, Mr. Speaker, the report of that assessment. The report says, Mr. Speaker, and let me find the exact page. It says the estimated indigent line for St. Kitts and Nevis, the cost of securing the cheapest baskets of food that would ensure 2,400 calories and comprise of all essential nutrients for good bodily health was EC 2,595 per annum, or $7.10 per day. On this basis, it was estimated that 1.1% of households or 1.4% of individuals was indigent. He said the poverty line was estimated at 7,329 per annum. And it says here that in terms of poverty, there was 23% of individuals, corresponding to 14.8% of households, were deemed to be poor.
Quarter of the population.
Quarter of the population deemed to be poor.
Up from 49 in 1995 when we took office. Up, down from 49.
Mr. Speaker,
When we took office,
the report prior to that, Mr. Speaker,
down to 23%.
the report prior to that
23%.
was done in the year 1999-2000. And admittedly, the report says that at the time when this one was done, there was a 7% or so decrease. So it means it was about 31% prior to this one. And so there was a decrease in this one.
And decrease further from 1995.
I get into that.
Decrease further from 1995.
I get into you.
When we get there.
Okay? So there was a decrease. But Mr. Speaker,
Drastic decrease.
the IMF that I like to speak about,
Drastic decrease.
September 2011, IMF country report, number 11 of 270. And I got to the report, Mr. Speaker, and what the report says in here. It said strengthening social safety nets. There are indications that poverty has increased in recent years. Poverty has increased in recent years. That's the IMF in 2011. So it means that under your administration, poverty increased, it got worse.
Increase from where to where?
It got worse.
Increase from what to what?
It got worse.
From what to what?
It got worse. It got worse.
From 11 to 11.3?
It got worse.
Give a full picture.
It got worse. That is what the IMF, all of a sudden, you no longer want to accept what the IMF says. You are there. Today, yesterday,
Can't read the line.
all the time asking IMF report, IMF report, IMF report, IMF report, IMF report. And now that you get quotations from the IMF report, you have all kind of questions to ask. Ask the IMF, you say you need the report, ask the IMF. The IMF that you said is reputable,
Was it less than 49%?
that you said is reputable, is saying that poverty got worse in 2011 under your administration. That is what you want persons to go back to?
From 11 to 11.
To become poorer?
From 11 to 11.3.
To become poorer?
Really serious about that figure?
You think Parsons going back to that?
11 to 11.3.
Parsons not going back to that. Will not go back to that. Those days are gone. You represent the past. You represent the past. You represent the darkest in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis. That is what you represent. Nobody going back to that. Not going back there. People not going back there. The report says that you are planning to speak to some international organizations, UNICEF and the World Bank. It says protecting the most vulnerable social groups will continue to be a priority under the program. And it speaks about giving persons cash and all kind of thing. It says it in here. You're the one who asking for IMF report. Well, there's one here for 2011. And he said you made people poorer.
You have it in your hand.
It was a full report.
You made people poorer. Well, when the IMF said it, well, you didn't ask them for the figures. You should have asked them for the figures because it happened under you. It happened under you. If you wanted to know what it is increased to, Mr. Speaker, I am the Minister of Finance. I am the Prime Minister. I am in charge of the country. The IMF brings a report to me and says to me that poverty has increased. Well, if you're so interested, then ask them what it has increased to. Don't ask me to happen under your watch. If you're so scared about the poor, then you would then ask the IMF, what has it increased to? You should answer to the IMF, I want to target the poor and the vulnerable, so give me more information so that I can deal with it. He asked me, 8 years later, what it increased from to. 8 years later. 8 years later. 8 years later, you come in to ask me that? You should have asked the IMF that. But one is not surprised that poverty increased. Because under your watch, electricity went up by 85%. Nonsense. You stood up in this country and said when you saw a woman electricity bill, I wanted to ball. I want ball.
She wasn't paying.
I want ball.
She wasn't paying.
The story now is, she wasn't paying because poverty increased. She couldn't afford to pay.
How many student bills of the A being paid right now?
She couldn't afford to pay. You not only increased it by 85%, but you also added a surcharge to it. Increased it by 85% and then added a surcharge to it. But what do you expect? What do you expect? Poverty is going to increase. And poverty did increase. You're the one who bankrupt the country and introduced the highest value-added tax in the region at 17%. You're the one who did it. You are the one who did it. Increase, bring a value-added tax that never existed before. The highest in the country. The highest in the region, sorry. 17%. Because you bankrupt the country, and that is why you had to do all of those things. Bankrupt the country. That is your history, and you need to accept it. Accept it. That is your history. That is your legacy. You go around the country, all kind of houses in darkness. People can't afford to pay bill.
You're not serious.
Businesses closed down.
People today are using candles.
You had companies like Rams saying that for the first time in the history of their operations, the cost of electricity is higher than the cost of wages and salaries. That's your legacy. You think business people trust you in this country? Business people cannot trust you. You gave them a haircut. You increased electricity. That is what you did. That is what you did. As I said, same old story. People don't want you. That is why you're over there. Accept the reality. Accept the reality. You got police officers walking in here and other civil servants. And you couldn't get no increment. Couldn't get no increase.
Where they get an increase from?
Couldn't get no increment. Huh?
couldn't even get
They got 11 increments.
Look out the
11 increments in 20
I'm coming to all of that.
11 increments in 20 years.
Look at
You're
it.
going good.
Coming to all of that.
In 20 years.
That's your history.
11 increments in 20 years. 11.
Bankrupt the
How
country.
many have you given? How many have you given?
Bankrupt the country.
The country so well on the
That is what you did.
Go ahead.
Look at all the police officers in here inside. The younger ones are not aware of it. The older ones can tell the younger ones about it. For years, couldn't get an increment.
Still no confidence.
Because you bankrupt the country. That's your legacy. You think police officers going back to that?
George,
They don't want that.
you know what your
They
legacy
don't
is?
want
You know what your
that.
legacy is?
They don't want that. That is your legacy in this country. Not going back to that. Civil servants will not go back to that. Civil servants will not go back to that. Your legacy is a legacy of failure in this country. A legacy of failure.
Asking an established
Civil servants don't trust you.
area.
Civil servants don't trust you. Business people don't trust you. The non-established workers,
Yes.
the non-established workers, same thing. Took away the bonus.
Yes. Young area.
Took away the bonus.
Yeah.
You think people going back to that?
No.
Persons have not forgotten.
No?
They have not. Oh, you think they forgot?
Yeah,
They have not forgotten.
They're going back to an era where policemen are getting locked up.
They have not forgotten.
Huh?
People don't trust you.
Policemen getting locked up because
Yes.
they ain't like the Prime Minister.
Don't trust you. That is your reality. People don't trust you.
We are locking up your political opponent.
And so coming out of this large public debt, you had this land for debt swap.
Going back to an era where you would
Your
be in a government and misappropriate
The
people's
man
money. And then
use
that's
National Bank.
That's what you're going back to.
Use National Bank like an ATM machine, Mr. Speaker.
You can't go back to that.
Use the bank like an ATM machine. And so what was the end result? $800 million in debt to the bank.
Yes.
Resulted in 1,700 acres of land
That's Harris' legacy.
being swapped for debt at National Bank. And Mr. Speaker, let us look at some of the debt for National Bank. Because they have been over there talking about wastage.
Yes.
So let us get to wastage.
Yes.
SSMC, they left a debt of $387 million at National Bank.
Harris.
They said it, you know.
Harris again.
They said that PAM had taken a position not to increase the debt in respect of SSMC. As a matter of fact, when PAM left office, the debt was at $34 million. $34 million. They increased it by about 12 times what they make it at.
Harris again.
Left the bank with a debt of $387 million. A debt that should have been repaid since 2011. Not repaid. Free Development Corporation, Mr. Speaker, $31 million they left in debt at National Bank. The Accountant General, that is in respect of the operations of the government, $161 million they left in debt at the National Bank.
And we left 900 million.
To Always Authority, $1.3 million.
$100 million in the bank.
Scasper, $93 million. That's the debt that they left at National Bank in respect of Scasper. When you hear them in here talking about second cruise pay and how we couldn't build second cruise pay, left the debt in respect of Scasper at $93 million at National Bank. ZIZ, 854,000. Development Bank, 3.4 million. And the one that I haven't said as yet, in respect of La Valley, a debt of $85 million. $85 million in respect of La Valley. I'm talking about wastage and what people could see and what people can't see. So let us focus on La Valley, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you know where La Valley is. I don't know if you know where La Valley is, Mr. Speaker. But you tell me, I dare anybody in this country to tell me, where can you see $85 million worth of debt down at La Valley? What is down there to show for the $85 million? I have to wonder if some of the debt, if some of the money went to Dubai, if some of it was in the briefcase.
Oh, yes.
You got to wonder if some of it was in the briefcase. $85 million in respect of La Valley. And nothing down there to show for it.
That's why you bought 6 cents there?
Nothing there to show for it.
Eh?
That debt should have repaid, Mr. Speaker, should have been repaid since April of 2015. That was the maturity date. And up to when you had the land for debt swap, not a cent paid back to the bank in respect of La Valley. But how are you going to pay back anything to the bank? When nothing was happening down there.
Development.
They put up one long fence down there.
Different.
All down on the seaside they put fence.
Long green fence.
One long green fence from Sandy Point to Newton Ground. A long green fence. You go down to the best side, long green fence on the two sides. You go down on the green fence. And up until now, you can't even see one of the zinc them from this fence that they put up. Miles and miles of fence. Miles and miles of fence. That's what the $85 million was spent for. They brought, I think they said, a desalination plant and a generator. I remember one Sunday morning driving, going home, can't get home. You're wondering why it is up and there's a dish generator going down the valley.
Block off the street.
Block off the street. So they were building a golf course. He said he went and he played. How many rounds of golf you say you played?
One hole.
How many holes you said he played?
One hole.
7 holes.
7 holes? Not even golf.
Where you go? The golf course
I don't know where the golf course gone. The golf course cost $85 million. That's what cost the $85 million.
What happened to your 6 cents you bought?
What happened to the $85 million?
You said you will recover.
What happened to the $85 million in respect of La Valley? This is what you want the country to go back to?
Where is 6 cents?
$85 million worth of debt and nothing to show for it in respect of La Valley? Nothing.
Where is 6 cents today?
Nothing. And then he comes in and he said, poof, the debt gone. Well, you must be when he poofed away everything down at La Valley too. Got nothing down here to show for $85 million. The good senator here is from Sandy Point. Senator, you see anything down there for $85 million?
Well, the golf course gone.
No.
She didn't see the report now.
The member for number 4 lives opposite La Valley. You see anything down there for $85 million?
Can't trust her vision.
No.
She didn't see the golf course gone.
You travel the country, you see anything down there for $85 million?
Not one thing down.
The member for number 7, you see anything down there for $85 million?
I see a bridge for $71 million.
And at the end of you over there to tell me you see anything down there for $85 million.
I see a bridge for $71 million.
Nothing for it. And coming here to talk about people wasting money. At least people go see the cruise ship there and there's a ship docked over there. At least the Island Main Road, you could see it. You could see it. But when it comes to $85 million in La Valley, you can't see anything for it.
Still ridiculous.
Nothing for it. And the figures don't lie. And I dare you to tell the public that you didn't leave $85 million worth of debt in respect of La Valley. I dare you to tell the public you didn't leave it. Yes.
Come on, man.
Yes. Why you like to stand up on point of order? I dare you to tell the public otherwise.
You need to be serious.
I dare you to tell the public otherwise.
You need to be serious.
Tell the public otherwise.
How much hole is it, play?
Tell the public otherwise.
Seriously?
How much hole is it,
You
play?
said you bought 6 cents to La Valley.
Tell the
Where
public
is it
otherwise.
today?
You want to get up on a point of order?
No, not me.
Not you?
No.
You don't want to speak about the 85 million? Well, you've been speaking about accountability.
You are going ahead.
You've been speaking about accountability. We're asking for an account of the $85 million that you spent at La Valley.
Where the 6 cents is gone.
Where the money gone?
Answer that.
Huh? You gone
Answer
Dubai?
6 cents is.
He was in the suitcase?
Ask about 6 cents is.
We gone? You gone Dominica?
About 6 cents is. Tell us about it.
People want to know where the money gone. Oh, it's a roll-up bag?
Roll up bag. You got it?
The security officer roll it back.
Oh, it's a roll-up bag.
We are asking you about 6 cents is and La Valley. What happened to it?
Some money, some money.
Poof, it gone.
The pocket full out.
Pocket full of money.
Oh, that's a La Valley money. Because $85 million, that's a lot of money. You can't see nothing for it.
We have 6 cents is gone.
Can't see nothing.
Dubai. Watch it.
Very good, man.
Can't see a thing for it.
Watch it.
That's his legacy.
Is gone.
London,
What happened to 6 cents is?
Big
I tell you, get up and speak if you want to speak.
No, tell us. You're on the feet.
Get up and speak.
You're on your feet, so tell us.
$85 million Nobody could see nothing for it. Man say he went down there, play 7 rounds of golf. No golf course down there. Put a desalination plant. You heard them over there complaining about lack of water. Put a desalination plant down there, which probably could have helped with the water situation. No desalination plant working. I don't even know what became of the generator.
You remember it?
You know,
you get it functional.
even when you think, you know,
People, man.
we have been criticized for the roofing program. We probably would have spent less on that program if you had used all of those zinc that you fenced the valley with to do repairs to people roof. It would have cost this government less. It would have cost the government less. I don't know where the zinc them gone.
You are not serious.
I mean, imagine you're going from Sandy Point to Newton going, all you see along the Island Main Road is one long green fence. You go down to what you see? The green fence. On the two sides. You go down, you're in a boat, you see this green fence, you want to know where behind there to hide.
You are not
Supposedly
serious.
$85 million.
Tell us
Nothing
about
there.
6 senses.
Nobody going back to that. That's the
Tell us
legacy.
about 6 senses.
And so what has resulted from that?
Tell us about 6 senses.
495 acres of land given to the bank in respect of the debt for the valley. 495 acres of land.
Was already in the bank.
No concern for the people of Sandy Point.
Raise the money.
500 acres of land given to National Bank to hold for that $85 million in debt.
That was used to raise the capital for the project. You don't even know that.
But where the money gone?
Where the money gone?
Yes, we gone.
Where 6 senses gone?
Where the money gone?
Where 6 senses?
Nobody give us the money for 6 senses. But you borrowed $85 million from the bank for the valley.
Where 6 senses gone?
And nobody know where he gone.
Tell us where 6 senses gone.
And so 495 acres.
Private development.
With government support. And that 85
So 6 senses didn't have government support.
No.
Whose land it was built on?
Order. The presenter has stopped speaking. I gather I can only assume it's because he's being disturbed.
Mr. Speaker, but I accept. I have my banter too. But they're going too far with it now.
We going too far?
Yes.
He's still over there talking.
I accept that.
He's how he's talking, he's telling you, he was talking.
And so 495 acres of land given to the bank in respect of La Valley. Mr. Speaker, that has nothing to do with the 1,200 acres which we came in this parliament to discuss, you know. Nothing to do with that 1,200 acres. Because when it came to that 1,200 acres, annexed 500 acres of land from Sandy Point in respect of that 1,200. So between the valley and the rest of the debt, Sandy Point alone, in Sandy Point alone, 1,000 acres of land. 1,000 acres from Sandy Point alone.
The valley is not entirely in Sandy Point.
1,000 acres
That is not true.
from Sandy Point
That is
alone.
not true.
All sort of cane fields in Sandy Point,
That is not true.
given as part of this land for debt swap.
Given.
All sort of cane fields in Sandy
But
Point.
you all sold it to foreign people.
That's the legacy
That's what
that you have
all
left.
did. Sold it to foreign people.
That is the legacy that you have left. 1,700 acres of land and 1,000 acres from Sandy Point.
You forget that?
None from constituency number 6.
Nobody
None
ever
from number
sold
6.
1 square foot of land.
1,000 acres of land. And so when you look at Fig Tree and the natural expansion of Fig Tree, Mr.
Sold
Speaker,
to Chinese people.
500 acres gone.
And say that you build it 5
To the bank.
star.
Well, some of them up until now, some of them ain't even title. Yes.
Yes.
Move persons from down the valley
The land for debt swap.
because he
Sold
said
off
this whole new development
on the earth.
coming to the valley. Move out the people who are living down there.
That's a big Shawn
Gave
dance.
them big houses.
Move up until now they can't get title. They ain't got a title.
Proper houses. Well, you actually give them the title.
Move out the people from the valley, say bringing this development to the valley.
That's a bad man.
And up until now,
Bad man.
and you think the people of Sandy Point gonna forget that? That's your legacy.
Bad legacy.
Not going back to the past.
Remember for number 5, your legacy is on the streets.
Nobody going back to that.
Telling you that.
Nobody going back to that. Nobody going back to the past.
Kenny will take you out.
Nobody going back to that.
Kenny will take you out.
I tell you, same old. I tell you on that.
Kenny.
1,700 acres of land, 1,000.
Let's get any member for number.
And no, as a matter of fact, you know, when it came to the second set, the land for that swap, he went Kayan. He had meeting, he said, to explain to the people of Kayan. He went number 4 to say explaining to the people of number 4 and Sandy Point. Sandy Point, up until now, he reached Sandy Point with one meeting to explain to the people of Sandy Point why they must lose 1,000 acres of land. Not a word to the people of Sandy Point. All over the rest of the country, so he provided an explanation. And can't reach Sandy Point to provide an explanation. And most of the land came from Sandy Point. That is why this government took a decision. That is why this government took a decision to buy back, to start buying back the land. And we have already bought back some of the land in Sandy Point, Mr. Speaker. We have already bought back some of the land in Sandy Point for the people of Sandy Point.
Bought back what?
Bought back some of it. That is what we have done.
Where was it bought from? Who was it bought from? The Chinese?
Exactly. Who
You
is
said
bought
the
from?
Chinese.
The soul of the land. That's what
Mr. Speaker,
Order.
I move on. Senator opposite got up and he spoke. And he said when he looks in the audit report, he looks at overspending
Get to page 17 and 18.
at the office of the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And he said, Mr. Speaker, you had overspending of some $117 million, Mr. Speaker.
The overage was 87.
And
Yeah.
didn't tell the people that the said audit report gives an explanation as to what the overspending was in respect of.
300%.
Because
over.
the report says it.
You tried to
He said consultancy fees in respect of citizenship by investment,
300%.
56 million. And I want to keep that in mind, Mr. Speaker.
That alone more than the budget.
Consultancy fees for citizenship by investment, 56 million, and I want you to keep that in mind. Marketing fees for the citizenship by investment unit, 14 million. Keep that in mind also. Refurbishment of ZIZ,
Those numbers will pull out of thin air.
677,000.
Yeah, it will appear so.
Payments to national scholars, 67,000. SIDF, 10 million. And outstanding costs to UWI for the Council of Legal Education, 2.5 million.
So explain what the consultancy was about now, the $56 million for one consultancy. Explain that.
Mr. Speaker,
One consultancy.
what he did not say to the public is that the report also says that recurrent revenue consists of tax and non-tax revenue. Revenue from these sources total 916 million for 2018. The performance of recurrent revenue was 261 million greater than the budget estimate for 2018. He tell you that in terms of the spending, you had this large variance of 80-something million. He ain't telling in terms of what we collected.
Acceptable to you?
We collected $261 million
Is that-
more.
is that
But Mr.
acceptable
Speaker,
to
there are
you?
2 points.
Is it people's money? If
There are
there's
2 further
overage,
points that I want to
people
make, Mr. Speaker.
That's
And
good.
these are the 2 further points, Mr. Speaker. Under that administration, the public would have never known about this.
And all
Because
the- all-
under that administration, Mr. Speaker, they took the monies for the Citizenship by Investment Program and placed it in a fund called SIDF
Please.
and never gave an account to the public.
What is it? You're not serious.
There was a private fund.
And refused to give an account to the public. So that is the first point I want to make, Mr. Speaker. Because when we're talking about transparency and accountability, at least the public can see, based on the Director of Audit report, spending in respect of the CBI program. Can be seen.
Every year.
Can be seen.
That kind of performance is
So that is the first point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, not placing in the private fund. Because the member for number 6 got up in here when he was asked a question when he was in government about the Citizenship by Investment Program. And he said that's a private fund. Don't come ask him any questions about it.
Are published every year.
Not, that is not what you said.
There was a private foundation.
This is a private foundation.
Accounts are published.
And he doesn't know anything about it.
Accounts are published.
At least under this government. You can see it here in the Director of Audit report. You can see it here, Mr. Speaker. So whether it is the auditor, the people in finance, or the people, the ordinary man on the street, that is what accountability is all about.
Unacceptable.
Persons can see it for themselves. The second point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, is that when he said that it's a private foundation, it is because a question was raised in this parliament by the member for number 8. Because when you hear people in here talking about they can't get information, Mr. Speaker, there is something on the order paper named questions. And not once in the 5 years, Mr. Speaker, they have ever come here to ask a question about anything. Not once. Never once in the 5 years that they have been here come here to raise any question about anything. And then talking about they don't have information and accountability and transparency.
Where the money gone?
The parliament, Mr. Speaker, allows them to do that.
For one consultant.
You hear them over there asking all sorts of questions, how much spent on the roofing program, asking about 6 senses. Well, use the parliament and come and ask the questions. File the questions with the speaker, with the clerk, and come in and ask them. And stop telling persons that you can't get answers. Because the mechanisms which are available to you, you refuse to use them.
You all never answer.
You never raised a question yet.
Not you will raise questions.
Tell me which parliamentary sitting you had any questions on the order paper coming from the opposition. On the order paper.
And you have no decency to respond.
Tell us, tell the public,
I'm going to waste our time.
oh, you ain't gonna waste your time.
No,
Oh, you have changed them out now. You change them out now.
The question we're asking now is where is the IMF report and why it's not been released? That's a question.
Come in and raise them formally. And then if they aren't answered, you make the criticisms.
I just spoke about it.
Not once. Not once.
What's the reason for
And telling the public that you can't get answers.
Where's the IMF report and why is it
You
not
got the Public Accounts Committee.
That's the question we asked.
The member for number 6 is the chair.
You think I'm any fool?
Never ever convened the meeting of the Public Accounts Committee.
You think I'm stupid?
Not once. I was on the opposition bench, Mr. Speaker. And I had my days when I wrote to the chairman about the Public Accounts Committee and convening a meeting of it.
Can't get no answer. Waste of time.
That's the excuse. Can't say that he has done it and not received any answers. He ain't doing it because he ain't gonna receive any answers.
Because I know you ain't going to give no
It's like
answer.
a child goes to school, has a question to answer, and the child goes home and says to the mother, I ain't asked the teacher because I ain't gonna get an answer.
Imagine that.
But of course,
That is what he's saying to the
that's a
public.
sensible
The
child.
teacher doesn't make the rule, you know.
That's how you represent people, Mr. Speaker.
You can only source the audit report.
You had questions. We brought private members bill in
I know
here.
you have something you
We asked questions.
Getting all kind of pushback.
Not once.
Why a consultancy cost $56 million over?
One consultant.
You should know the answer to that.
$56 million.
But as I said, under you, that information would have never been in here.
Really?
It would not have been in here.
SIDF reports were all published on your site.
It would have never been in here. Would have never been in here.
All.
Because you made it a private foundation.
All were published.
So the people's citizenship money must go in a private foundation.
How could be a private foundation?
We said put it in the consolidated fund.
Every act.
And so everyone can know what is happening
Every Sunday
with the people's money.
by the government.
Mr. Speaker,
Every-
budget after budget. How much time do I have left?
Your initial period would end at 10 minutes to 6 o'clock. Yes.
Bastia High School. Because every time we come in here,
You building that?
I'm going to deal with you now.
You building it?
I'm going to deal with you now.
Dealing with me?
Yes.
You should deal with yourself for fooling the people.
I'm going to deal with you now.
Fooling the people.
I'm going to deal with you.
Deal with
I'm
yourself.
going to deal with your legacy
Deal
now.
with yourself.
His legacy?
Your legacy.
Legacy?
Yes, your legacy.
Legacy? You fooling the people. 5 years you got them up there, fooling them.
Bastia High School is an ongoing saga. It ain't end yet.
So if they
4 years
come in.
not been written, just you don't know. It is an ongoing saga.
Come in, Mr. Speaker. Parliament after parliament, Basti High School, this is what NIOSH report says, this is what Career report says, and all sorts of things. And I don't believe, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the history of Basti High School has been well documented.
In those reports.
Well documented.
In those reports.
Because you have students, you have teachers, persons who lived the reality of the Basti High School. Lived the reality of the Basti High School, Mr. Speaker. They closed down the Basti High School twice. Not once. Twice.
In the interest of the students.
Closed it the first time. They said they made all the repairs to the school. It's safe to go back in. Students went back in.
Use the reports.
Teachers went back in, Mr. Speaker. And after they went back in, had to be taken out again.
They did the right thing.
Because he said to them
Use the report.
that the school is safe.
Use the
Go
report.
back to the school.
Well, I said
And so when this government
I said
took
the school
office,
safe.
there was a shift system at the Basti High School. But Mr. Speaker, what happened at the Basti High School is a direct result of the neglect of that administration, not this government. Basti High School is a situation we inherited.
Because of your deception. Your deception.
My deception?
Your deception.
You spoke about NIOSH.
Read the report.
This one of the report from Kariri.
Read the report.
And in this particular one,
report.
meeting to review the indoor quality assessment at the Basti High School, 9 January 2013.
It's not a public health organization.
List of participants.
Kariri is not a public health
Why is you call them in? So why you didn't say that when you call them in? Well, I wonder who it is calling Kariri to do this report in respect of Basti High School.
We call
You're making yourself sound like a hypocrite.
We call him NIOSH. That's what we did.
Who called in Kariri?
You all.
This report dated 2013.
Yeah.
I was in government 2013 to call in Kariri.
You know what you mean?
You know what I
You know what
mean?
you mean?
You know what I mean?
Accident in the ground.
What medication?
Explain to him, Patches, what I mean.
What medication?
Bring the wrong bag.
You bring the wrong bag. I mean, you need his medication right
You
now.
got the wrong bag?
Yeah.
But you better go home.
Big medication.
You bring the wrong bag, but he bag up in Dubai. He
bag
bag up in Gatwick.
Bring the wrong bag.
Back to the point, man.
But he bag in Gatwick.
Bag in Gatwick.
Bring it back to the point.
No back.
And it's a list of participants, Mr. Speaker.
Two of them.
Dr. Java Kanka from the Alexandra Hospital in Nevis.
Report to you.
Dr. Thelma Philip Brown. Dr. Milton Whitaker.
Oh.
Dr. Patrick Martin. Mr. Clement Williams. And the recorder, Eunice Nisbet. And it says the meeting convened at 3:45 p.m. The meeting agreed that the Career report on the indoor quality assessment at the Basti High School was a credible report. Credible report. He just dismissed Career. Prepared by a reputable organization.
Dismiss Kariri.
The meeting accepted the recommendations of the report. And what are some of the recommendations? Participants noted that based on the report, the excessive buildup of dust and mold in the area studied by Kariri were problematic and could have been the cause of symptoms being experienced by the students and staff of the school. The physical abundance of mold was of serious concern, and it was noted that in one of the classrooms, 4G3, where there were no symptoms, the ratio was 1. It was further noted that the action effect of spores should not be minimized, and that spore could release mycotoxins. In addition, repeated exposure could weaken the system. Goes on further in the report, Mr. Speaker.
Nothing wrong with the school.
It says
Nothing was wrong.
the level of saturation
Reception.
of the external sewage system,
You have a report.
the level of satuation
What does that say?
of the external sewage system was very high. You know what the sewage system is, Mr. Speaker? Where the waste goes.
All those were fixed.
And there were issues of seepage and sinkhole in the areas of soakaways. Fix, but you move them back in and move them back out.
You have a 2015 report.
It was noted that the sewer gases in the area of the staff room were problematic and caused reported symptoms. The meeting noted that the ministry had commenced addressing the problem. However, the meeting recommended that the ministry adopt a comprehensive approach to addressing this issue.
You have a 2015 report that...
The paint on the buildings was falling off, and this could raise issues related to lead exposure.
And
All those were
Issues related to the possible presence of asbestos. Issues related to the possible presence of asbestos should not be overlooked.
all those were
Asbestos causes cancer.
issues related to the possible existence. There was no
Asbestos causes
existence of
cancer.
asbestos.
Asbestos causes cancer.
Issues related
To the possible presence of asbestos
and the issue
should
of
not be overlooked.
The possible existence never existed.
never existed.
Never existed. But
Mr.
that's
Speaker,
what we're holding on to.
it goes on.
Never existed.
Issue over there.
You finished?
There was an issue raised.
Order.
You finished?
Members.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, I should rise on a point of order. Speaker, may I?
Please let it.
May I, Mr. Speaker?
Former Minister.
I have presented in this house, and so many people rise to their feet to make objections. I have one to make, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the member has tried to mislead the House. During the issues we had in relation to the Basta High School, there were many complaints being made, many issues being raised. Some of them were genuine, some of them were not genuine. Some of them turned out to be issues that when you investigated actually were issues, they existed. There was an issue raised in relation to the existence of asbestos at the school. So we brought in persons to investigate, to look at the surroundings. There was no asbestos found
None
there.
at all.
And that is part of what was happening at the Basta High School. People kept raising issues, whatever was their motivation.
Exactly.
But when those issues were raised, the ministry had a responsibility to investigate them and deal with them definitively and put them to rest.
To invest.
When an issue arises, I deal with it. I was a responsible Minister of Education.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Responsible.
He can get up many times, you know? Many times. The report goes on. Me not got to lie. These are records that you left at the ministry. I don't have to tell any lies. Number 4. Significant structural faults discovered. Reference roof. Concrete structure need cleaning and resealing. Shedding concrete piece could fall and cause serious injury. In some areas, steel used for reinforcement in columns, beams, and slabs corroded because of exposure to moisture through cracks. Expansion of corroded reinforcement steel caused areas breaking the outer and underside. Earthquake and weakening structure need to be considered. With sewage, mold, and weakening structure as seen by separation of the concrete as a result of the corroding steel is another serious concern. It says the physical structure should be reviewed. Questioning the physical structure of the school. Saying it should be reviewed. Walls and floors should be thoroughly cleaned and sealed. The meeting agreed that maintenance policies procedures should be established for government's physical assets. That's why he left at Basta High School. This is a report of a meeting of a committee, the meeting to review the indoor quality assessment at the Basta High School. It took place at the CDU, which is the Curriculum Development Unit, Basta St. Kitts, 9 January 2013. So even the structural integrity. And the committee, Dr. Thelma Philip Brown, Dr. Milton Whitaker, Dr. Patrick Martin, Mr. Clement Williams, Dr. Java Kankar.
Was reading all those issues.
Some of their supporters. So, one person alone raised all these issues in a meeting with 6 persons, where we must be, was she one powerful woman?
She said, remember the committee, she raised the issue, they have to be documented.
But Mr. Speaker,
They have to be documented.
so we have heard all sorts about Basta High School. But it's not Basta High School alone he left in that state.
Really?
It's not Basta High School alone. I have a next report here.
Tell us about the board now.
Ministry of Education Maintenance Requirements, May 2013. And let us go through some of the problems stated on this report. Irish Town Primary, block toward the ocean, roof and window to be addressed. Electrical in office to be addressed. Bathroom, toilets and repairs. Those were done under this administration. Neglected the Irish Town Primary School.
The Ministry of Education did complete renovation works at the Irish Town Primary School in 2013 and 2014. Completely.
Next slide.
Completely. Stop misleading the public.
Next slide.
Stop correct the moral problem you now have in all the schools. Correct the moral problem you know in all the schools. We documented what issues there were and dealt with all of them. You ain't got to deal with none. We dealt with the issues. We dealt with them.
Secondary. Repairs to the wooden block, floorboards, windows, electrical issues to be resolved. Mr. Speaker, when we took office in 2015, there's a block down at Charles Emails. We had to bring in a contractor to change the entire roof. The contractor telling you wheelbarrow of bad feces. Of bad feces. That's 2015. That is how we left Charles Emails Secondary. The care center. The near kitchen sink cracking up. Plumbing problems in nursery and kitchen pipes leaking. Roof leaking in preschool classroom and bathroom. Preschool and nursery bathrooms water do not run out through holes. Building cracks. Again, it's Team Unity addressed the roofing problem at the daycare center. Team Unity had to address that problem. He got a report in 2013. Did nothing about it. And it's Team Unity who had to address it. Estridge Primary, because they have spoken about mold over at Estridge Primary. What he hasn't said is that in 2013 in the same report, leaking roof. Well, if you have leaking roof over there, what do you expect? I guess you're going to say he addressed it too. It wasn't addressed.
Until you wait 5 years to say there's a
Wasn't addressed. I tell you, I'm many times. Wasn't addressed.
You're lazy.
Wasn't addressed. Leaking roof. He left all of these there and now saying, I'm lazy and I am addressing them.
Every day
Tell me the sense in that.
Every day there issues.
He left all of them there. I addressing them and I am the lazy one. Well, I wonder how would he describe himself? Kayan High School, because they have made a big song and dance about Kayan High School too.
Crazy.
Home block windows renovation. Renovated under this government.
Okay, good. You're lazy.
Classroom windows, doors and roof. Renovated under this government. I went over Kayan High School very early when I became the minister. Saw a classroom block over there and couldn't believe that they have children using that classroom block. Infested with termites.
Where is that?
This government.
Where is that?
This government had to address that problem.
No.
Sadler's Daycare in constituency number 6. Again, leaking roof. Addressed under this government. This is a report from 2013. Joshua Obadiah Williams Primary. Bat-infested roof. Need for bat-proofing. Septic tank needs attention. It smells. Bathroom to be addressed. Not addressed by him. A report from 2013. And you think students and parents can trust you? Students, parents and teachers can trust you? This is your legacy.
Deal with your issue.
This is your legacy. Dr. William Connor Primary School. Leaky roof. Repaired recently under this government. And then the boss and tell people they left $900 million in the treasury. And when you left $900 million in the treasury, the children, the youngest of children in this country suffering. That's your legacy.
5 years he said mold over in school.
Dearby Primary. Roof to be repaired. Again repaired under this administration.
Please.
Repaired under this administration.
But you don't want to repair anything? I repair.
Challengers Daycare. The ministry head office. We had to move out of the ministry head office across the street. Renovation, repairs, painting. We had to move out of over there.
You must do something for yourself.
You ain't do none, that is the point. Industrial site daycare center. Roof is presently leaking in the following areas. Library, dining room, nursery, 1 and 2, and preschool. Electrical issues to be resolved. You know what the sad one about that one, Mr. Speaker? Industrial site daycare center. You got babies in there of all ages. Babies at that school of all ages. Issues with the roof. He got a report in 2013, didn't address it. When we went up there with Public Works, and we said to Public Works, we want to wait until school closed to begin to address the problem. Public Works said, no, you can't do that. This roof could fall in at any point in time. And we had to take all the children from out of there and send them between Victoria Road and McKnight. That's his legacy.
You're not telling the truth.
Imagine babies,
You're not telling the truth.
babies, roof falling in. So what you were paying him to do? What were you paying him to do? What were you paying him to do? To come cabinet, to get duty-free in the house, because he admitted that he got duty-free in the house and turned around and rented the house to the Commissioner of Police. Not looking after the children, but looking after your own business. That is what you were doing. That is what you were doing.
Honourable Member, Presenter, your time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully ask for next half an hour. I don't even think I'll get to the ministry because I'm going to deal with your legacy.
The question is, that the Honourable Member requires an additional 30 minutes. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Now that he has been given the additional 30 minutes, I would instruct that from here onwards that all interruptions would be restricted to points of order. Members rising on a point of order have allowed enough bantering during the entire presentation so far. So, continue.
Kayan Primary, leaky roof, windows broken, doors need replacing, toilet repairs. This government had to do repairs to Kayan Primary. Left Kayan Primary in a state of disrepair while he building his house at Boardwalk. They rented to the Commissioner of Police. That's your legacy. Sandy Point Primary, bathrooms and septic tank to be addressed. When I was in opposition, complaint after complaint about the septic tank at Sandy Point Primary. Septic tank down there, what you were paying him to do? Septic tank down there, over flooding, and they refuse to deal with it. Primary school children is under this government. We have to condemn those bathrooms. Yes. Condemn those bathrooms. That's his legacy. Neglecting the children. McKnight daycare, roof to be repaired. Again, done under this government. Left it there and did nothing about it.
What is he lazy supposed to do?
Huh? I don't know. I don't know what he was paying him to do. To build his own house. They rented to the Commissioner of Police.
$8,000.
We go on. I don't, and you go on primary. In constituency number 6, even that one he neglected. We had to change the roof down there as soon as the government changed. Neglected it. You weren't giving him the money as Minister of Finance? Is that the problem? You weren't giving him the money to do these things? You said you left $900 million in the treasury. That's why you want to come back in government for? To put him in charge of people's children? So when you're all in here talking about school and people can't trust this government, you think school children can trust that government when this is the legacy that you left?
Spend some time at
This is your legacy?
Spend some time at Baptist.
If I was a child and I look at the comparison between your government and this government, I wouldn't want your government to be in charge of my education.
Not at all. Not at all.
I wouldn't want that.
Not at all.
Washington Archibald High School.
Oh.
Windows need repairing. Bathroom needs some repairs. Electrical problems. Need a cover for the soakaway. Painting. We have to change the roof up there, but not. You see this thing about bathrooms? Since must be in the 90s. You had a problem up there with the septic up at Washington Archibald High School. 2 sets of bathrooms up there. Washington Archibald High School, the largest high school, about 800-900 students. So 2 sets of bathrooms up there to serve the students. A whole set of bathrooms closed down for years. Years. Because he neglected the problem. Repaired under this government and now serving the students. That's your legacy. I'm coming talking about how people treating children, treating students. Nobody can trust you all, and the people will not go back to that.
Not going back there.
Edgar Timaris Primary. Doors, roof leakage. When we went over to Edgar T, every single classroom was leaking. Not one exception. We had to change the roof for the entire school over at Edgerty Primary, Edgerty Morris. That is why you left there.
Crazy legacy.
Newton Ground Daycare Center, Tyrrell Williams Primary, Sandy Point Preschool, Tabernacle Daycare, Kayan Daycare, Newtown Nursery, Education Annex and Kayan Street, St. Paul's Nursery, the general section of institution primary and secondary schools. That's the legacy that you left. But you weren't tackling nothing. Only thing you were tackling is building your house. But you then get your sister to say she renting to the commissioner of police. But that's what he did. That is what he did.
When he retired with these, he went to the commissioner.
This is your legacy. We have had issues with mold in some of the schools. When we had the issue with Kayan High, we didn't tell the students and the teachers to go in and continue teaching. We said no. We are going to address the issue. And we closed the school and addressed the issue. We closed it and addressed it. Not tell them to go up there and tell them they're imagining things.
Close it down.
Not tell them they're imagining things. We have been addressing these issues. Fast as we get the complaints, as a matter of fact, we have had the Bureau of Standards going to all of the schools to undertake testing. The gentleman in charge of Bureau of Standards messaged me just today and said he has 4 schools now left to test. 4 of them. Looking at all of them comprehensively, but we're addressing them. You never addressed anything. Never addressed anything. The only thing you address is your house. Mr. Speaker, and it ain't just the schools alone. Ain't just the schools alone that left like that. A letter here, dated 16 July 2013, reporting the environmental health conditions of the building housing the offices of the Ministry of Education, Youth Empowerment, Information and Technology. The building that he was in, you know? The building that he was in, Information and Technology and International Trade and Consumer Affairs. Minister from number 4 would know about it because you had to move people out of over there. You had to run out of there. I had to run out of there. A whole report from 2013. He was over in that building.
Who was over in that building?
The building, you!
Which building?
The building across the street where your office was.
The one that you're in?
I'm not in there. I run out of there too. And the letter says, on Tuesday 21st May 2013, I made a visit to the above-mentioned government building located in Church Street, Bastille. The purpose of the visit was to investigate a number of complaints made by the workers who occupy the building. 2013? The building is staffed with approximately 30 plus workers performing mainly administrative duties. The edifice is a 2-story wood concrete building. The general staff occupy the 2 upper floors, and there is a basement that is not currently in use, and a distinct misty odor was detected. Samples of air were taken from different areas of the various floors occupied by staff, as well as from the entrance of the basement. These were submitted to the Bureau of Standards for analysis. See results on the attached form. During the inspection of the building, a number of defects were noted, and they are listed as follows. It was over in the building, you know? It was over in the building. Interior. The roof of the building showed evidence of leakage in some areas, and in other areas, ceiling tiles were missing. Paint on the walls was deteriorating in some areas. Door frames and window frames and windows throughout the building showed signs of deterioration and termites infestation.
That's the one he was in?
Glass in some window panes
That's the one he was
were
in?
broken. It was over in the same building.
Yeah.
The same building.
The big red carpet at the floor?
Yes, now look after nobody. Maybe that's why you end up in the hospital at Baptist Medical. I don't know. Maybe that's why you end up at Baptist Medical. I don't know.
But that was a mental problem.
But that was a I don't know. Maybe that's why.
That was a mental problem.
Maybe that's why. Because you're in the same building. But maybe you're correct. Because if I get this report and I'm in this building, I would want to move out of it immediately.
Right?
But then if I can't understand what's going on, I'm going to stand and think everything
You
okay.
get depression.
It says,
You know?
rodent droppings were seen in certain sections of the building.
That's about
Mr. Speaker, the senator isn't taking your directions. All the appliances and equipment was seen in different parts of the building. Bathroom facilities were unsanitary. Exterior. Refuse generated by the occupants was stored improperly. A broken drain was evident. There was evidence of bird feces on roof on the side of the building. A large crack was noted on the eastern side of the building that houses the Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education. But this was your report, not mine. But he spoke to the... What?
I brought in people to inspect a building.
I don't understand you.
Brought them in.
He said bird feces on the outside of the building. I said the bathrooms are unsanitary. He don't say nothing. Maybe he like the unsanitary bathroom.
Remember, I brought in the people to...
I spoke to rodents dropping on the inside of the building.
People to investigate the schools.
He said nothing. He said nothing.
And we'll get a report from them.
Conclusion.
So what do you expect?
The general physical condition of the building is unsatisfactory. This is supported by the results of the air quality test that indicated the presence of significant mold growth. The existing conditions pose a threat to the health and safety of the occupants. Therefore, I recommend that the staff be relocated and the structure demolished. 2013.
Who signed the report?
The report was signed by Alexander Riley, Chief Environmental Health Officer.
You know that?
When the government changed us, the office I had to occupy. When I went over there, the youth department over there still, consumer affairs still over there. The step office was located over there. We moved out everybody from over there. We moved out everybody. I wonder what about the building was renovated. Why you tell lies? The building wasn't renovated.
A contractor, Thomas, our boy from Newton Gown, Thomas. What's his name again? Richard Thomas. The Ministry of Education contracted Richard Thomas to do comprehensive renovations on the Ministry of Education building on Church Street. Subsequent to that report, which we commissioned that report, taking responsible action. So he doesn't know what he's saying, Mr. Speaker. Misleading the House deliberately. Misleading the House deliberately.
Mr. Speaker, I walked in that building, repairs done on the building.
Yes.
But then you have to ask where the money went for the repairs. The Minister for number 4, the 4 staff, I think, could move from over there. Consumer affairs. Move from over there.
So you could have made the employees on them conditions.
Working under them conditions. Not only had students, but staff working under those conditions and want to come and criticize this government about maintenance and about mold. That's your legacy. Accept it. That is your legacy. Accept it as being part of your legacy. And so you have this whole big song and dance about Bastille High School, that we're building Bastille High School over on the aquifer.
Will you ever build it?
We will build it.
After 5 years?
It will be built. It will be built. Bastille High School will be built. We went. We got an EIA report. Got an EIA report, Mr. Speaker. They have had access to it. And even after that, and they criticized it, we went and we got the next company, Mr. Speaker, to do a peer review of the environmental impact assessment in respect of the Bastille High School. We got a gentleman by the name of Dr. Robert Maliva to do it. It says he has over 30 years of international research and consulting experience in groundwater resources management, subsurface geology, and fluid flow investigations. Prior to joining WSP, Robert was a principal hydrogeologist at Schlumberger Water Services and CDM, and held several research positions at Harvard University, the University of Cambridge in England, and the University of Miami. He is the author of over 100 technical papers and 4 books. Because they questioned the reporters, we said, okay, let us go and get a peer review done of the report. And we did exactly that. And what the report here says. And it speaks to several different sections. He said the baseline data presented, and he speaks to the baseline data. He said watershed and runoff. The conclusion of no to minor impacts is professionally sound, provided that the pond and conveyances are maintained. Retention ponds can lose capacity over time due to clogging. Nevertheless, if the downstream conveyance improvements are in place, an increased flooding risk in the Newtown area should not occur, and the existing risk should actually be reduced. Be reduced. The actual flooding risk will be reduced. Water percolation. He said construction of buildings, sidewalks, courtyards, and roads decrease. Pervious area for infiltration and increased runoff. Measures planned or proposed to mitigate this impact include routing roof runoff to a storage tank and runoff from the car park, playing fields, and access from the roof into storm tech chambers. The proposed improvements to the downstream stormwater drainage system would also mitigate against additional flood risk. On-site infiltration would increase local aquifer recharge. The EIA conclusion of no impact from increased runoff is technically sound, provided that the planned and proposed infrastructure are indeed constructed. Pollutants and contaminants entering the aquifer, because that's the big thing. The potential sources of pollutants were identified in the EIA. Chemicals from the science laboratories and discharges from the inside sewage treatment systems discussed in the following section. The plans for the New Basti High School include a collection system for wastewater from the science laboratories that allows pre-treatment in a dilution chamber prior to the discharge into the subgrade, via an engineered tile field south of the New Basti High School boundary. The EIA also includes recommendations on the storage of chemicals and the disposal of laboratory chemical wastes. The recommendations on laboratory waste reduction and treatment and the planned disposal system are technically sound. Technically sound and overly, puts in here, and overly protective. Not just technically sound, but overly protective, which means we have gone far beyond what is required. It is a report to the Permanent Secretary of Education, and it's a peer review of the New Basti High School Environmental Impact Assessment, and it was done by a company by the name of WSP USA Incorporated. And it's dated June 14th, 2019, Mr. Speaker. That has been the big thing. The report saying overly protective. It says typically high school chemistry classes do not use, at least in significant quantities, dangerous and hazardous chemicals because of the risk they would pose to the students. The conclusion of no impacts to the groundwater from the science laboratories is technically sound. It speaks to the effect of the development of the aquifer, and in particular sewage treatment from the building. And you have the concluding paragraph, Mr. Speaker. It is my professional opinion that the EIA was properly performed and that the conclusions of the EIA with respect to stormwater flow and groundwater quality impacts are technically sound. That is what we have done. They want to know why it's taking so long for the Basti High School to come. But it is because we have had questions. We have been addressing the questions. They said this morning they had plans for the health, the mental health daycare center. But they said the government changed and while they were doing certain things. So it seems as though when it comes to that, it's supposed to take time for them to build it. But when it comes to the Basti High School, it is supposed to be built overnight. Yes, we have spent money.
5 years.
We have spent money to the plans. For the first thing we did,
5 years.
the first thing we did was bring an end to your shift system.
5 years.
You had children going home 6 and 7 o'clock in the night at a time when crime was high in this country.
And teachers working double shift.
Politics.
Teachers working double shift,
Politics.
complaining. You had them in a shift system.
Yes.
You.
7 o'clock in the morning.
Some go in school 7 in the morning, some come home 7 o'clock in the night. Parents complaining that some of the children home in the afternoon.
So when we was about?
They can't find nobody to look after the children. That is your legacy, that is what you left. We brought that to an end.
Right away.
We brought it to an end. And since then, we have been dealing with getting the new Basti High School off the ground, and we will get it off the ground. It was a matter that was before the cabinet just recently again.
Process.
Because we are going through the process. We are going through the process.
Process.
Going through the process. That is what we are doing. Speak for what time?
I'm making the duty free.
How about 10 minutes?
Making the duty free. Making the duty free.
And so, Mr. Speaker,
Duty free.
I think it was important for me to speak to some of those things. But indeed, Mr. Speaker, we have the Ministry of Education, and then we have the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Culture. And we have been doing a number of things, Mr. Speaker, in those ministries. If you take the Ministry of Education, for example, Mr. Speaker, right now we're in the process, Mr. Speaker, of doing curriculum reform. And that process is ongoing. As a matter of fact, come January, Mr. Speaker, we are expecting to pilot the new curriculum in some of the grades at the primary level and some of the forms at the secondary level. For example, Mr. Speaker, as part of the reform, we intend to have health and well-being as a separate subject at the primary level. So whereby now you have more or less 4 subjects that you concentrate on, you would have 5 subjects. What we're doing at the secondary level, Mr. Speaker, whereby you do 12 and 13 subjects in first and second form, that is going to be reduced, Mr. Speaker, to 8 subjects at the first form level and at the second form level. Then when you get into 3rd, 4th, and 5th, you will have a cluster of subjects, Mr. Speaker, that you choose from. You have some subjects which will still be mandatory, but then there are certain clusters that you will choose electives from, Mr. Speaker. To graduate, you will have to gain a certain number of credits, Mr. Speaker. So that is one of the important things we are doing in terms of curriculum reform. We're looking at the professionalization of the teaching service. And so we have had UNESCO assisting us with that particular goal. We have an education officer who has been assigned. We had a lady who was in the Federation recently, a lady by the name of Dr. Doctors. And so she has come from UNESCO to assist us with the professionalization of the teaching service. We have spoken about OpenSys before. I'm happy to report that OpenSys is now available in all of the schools, and so we are slowly beginning to now utilize it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the provision of internet coverage at the schools, we're working on that, and so far we have been able to increase the bandwidth at the primary level. We have increased the bandwidth at the secondary level. And so the schools are seeing some improvement in terms of that. You have heard the move of the bill speaking to ICT. And so if we're speaking about ICT, it is important, Mr. Speaker, that at the primary level, at the secondary level, we have that ongoing. We have the TVET project, Mr. Speaker, that is currently ongoing, and that is progressing. I think very shortly, hopefully during the course of 2020, in terms of the CVQs, in terms of the NVQs, persons will be able to get their certifications. We have a number of persons who we have been able to send overseas on scholarships as part of the TVET program, getting them to study certain TVET-related fields. When they return, it is expected that they have to come and teach within the schools. You have probably heard, Mr. Speaker, that the ministry took a decision to assist some 54 teachers currently pursuing a master's degree in collaboration with the University of the West Indies and CFBC. Of the tuition, the ministry is paying half, which is just about $8,500 in respect of each teacher. 54 of them, Mr. Speaker. Never done. In the history of this country, never done. Because persons were looking after their own affairs. That is what they were doing. Looking after their own affairs. And so we have been able to enroll. Man, listen now. That is, you weren't listening then, you're still not listening. Come on, you got to go back to Baptist. 54 teachers, Mr. Speaker, enrolled in a master's program, given support by this government from all through the length and breadth of the Federation. 54 of them. As a matter of fact, when I leave, we have to go to a cocktail this evening in respect of Carnival. I invited them and they tell me, a number of them said they have an exam tomorrow, so they can't make it. Diligently pursuing their studies.
They don't want to be with you. Good excuse.
Diligently.
Good excuse.
Diligently.
They don't want to be with
Diligently pursuing their studies. Given support from this administration. When you look at youth, sports and culture, Mr. Speaker, number of projects being undertaken. If you look at the capital, on the capital side of it, Mr. Speaker, we have done work in Cairn, we have done work in Connery. You probably heard of the groundbreaking ceremony recently in Tabernacle. We have done significant work in Sandy Point. We have done work in Half Ritchie. We have done work in Challengers. We have done work all over the country.
All over.
You heard the member for number 4 saying that we're about to put LED lighting on the play field in Virtuals. Neglected by that administration. We had a tennis tournament held here recently, and we only could have had the tennis tournament held here because we resurfaced the tennis courts in Warner Park. Because when you go up there, you had all kind of potholes in the tennis court, lights now work, fence dropping down, all sorts of things. That is how they left the country, in a state of neglect. That's the legacy, and that is what they're asking persons to go back to. $940 million they said they left in the country. And you know who benefited from it? Christoph Harbour got a couple millions. Kitishon Hill, over 100 million. That is what they were doing with the money, not looking after poor people in this country. We have looked after the people in this country. And that is why the people of this country will return us as the next government of this country whenever the election is called. Whenever the election is called. They're talking about somebody from Sandy Point saying going to beat me, and this is the last year on anyway. Because I can deal with them. A woman called me the other day, Mr. Speaker. She said, why you come by me? I said, wait is happening. She said, come. She said, this puppy should come by me. She said, this puppy should come by me with this bag. And she thinks she getting a bag of goodies. I said, well, a pair of socks look like he went in, must be Toys R Us. That's some kind of cartoon socks like he went in Toys R Us.
That's in the gel? Please.
Yes. So the woman said, in the bag.
That's in the gel?
Pair of socks.
What did you give her before that?
Look like he went in Toys R Us to shop for the socks.
What did you give her?
So she got these space socks. Look like you went Toys R Us.
What
I'm coming to the rest of them.
What had you given her before that?
1 cake of soup. A cake of soup. Come on, say with the forward, miss. 1 cake of soup. Look at this cake of soup. I don't, you ain't gonna name on it. I don't know.
The name brand?
This name is like you feel. No name brand soup. A red rod, she must be telling she a sweat. She But Mr. Speaker, you know what the most amazing thing is? Well, watch this. A toothbrush. I ever see a toothbrush like this? This is like when you go on them plane and they give you a toothbrush to use. Yeah, one of these nothing. My father got poodle home. I wouldn't even use this toothbrush to brush the teeth of the poodle. Well, watch that. Yeah, big woman. You come from Gatwick? I watch this toothbrush. Any of you would accept this from somebody? You would have accepted this from somebody? This is the candidate that I want to bring to the people at Sandy Point. Watch the toothbrush.
You're mocking people like that.
He mocking people by giving a woman this toothbrush. Out the place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's really amazing. They can come here and mock poor people like that.
And so, Mr. Speaker, again, I said to you, Mr. Speaker, that despite the doom and gloom coming from the opposite side, this government has performed. This government has performed, Mr. Speaker. Budget after budget, we have experienced positive growth in this country. Growth that has benefited the people. That is why we could have paid 4 double salaries, and I had a file here with the double salaries, you know, because I heard one of them over there said double salaries began under them. But the file here with the history of double salaries in this country, we wait until a general election to pay.
I think just that it's clear. I'm giving you an additional 1 minute to wrap up for whatever interruptions there were. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Really should not be doing that. Should not be mocking
Shame your shame.
like that. Me shame?
Yes.
Honourable members.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend this budget to Safe Passage. Because it is a good budget, Mr. Speaker. A budget in which we have shown that we know how to manage the finances of this country. A budget which will take this country to further positive growth in 2020. You heard the various reports, Mr. Speaker, which indicate that the economy is expected to grow by 3% in 2020, Mr. Speaker. And that is what we are doing, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the people of this country, delivering on their behalf. And so that is why when you walk the streets of St. Kitts and Nevis, they're saying to us that this government will be returned not just with the seats that we have, but with an increased mandate. That is what will happen after the next election in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, may it so please you.